Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Linda Cook. I'm the Associate Director with the AmeriCorps Seniors. Thank you for joining us today. This is our third webinar for this week, covering the series of Senior Demonstration Program grants with a side of the American Rescue Plan notice that is currently open, as well as the FGP SCP replacement competition. Today's webinar will feature, we will focus specifically on the AmeriCorps Seniors Demonstration Program, give you some examples of those programs, as well as cover a little bit more about the American Rescue Plan opportunity. So I'm going to go off camera. One caveat before we dive into questions, because this is a competition, there will be some questions I cannot answer, just in all fairness, because this is a competition. If your particular question is specific or requires a lot of context and discussion, we cannot answer or address that information. You will be directed to send an email to the American Rescue SDP at CNCS address that is on your screen. If there is a question that none of us can answer today, we will provide a response in our FAQs section that is present on the notice page. I'm going to talk a little bit about AmeriCorps, the agency, just before we dive in, before I turn it over to Colin to introduce a poll. So AmeriCorps, formerly known as the Corporation for National and Community Service, is the federal agency responsible for civic engagement. That means we lead civic engagement through service and volunteerism, through our grant-making efforts, and through our National Days of Service. We help millions of Americans improve their lives and the lives of their fellow citizens through service. We do that mostly through by working hard hand in hand with local partners to tap the ingenuity and can-do spirit of the American people to tackle our country's most pressing challenges. Our mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement. National service is an opportunity to volunteer your time and talent to make a difference in people's lives and get things done for America. Through AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors, individuals of any age can serve our country and our community by putting their valuable skills to use. As I just mentioned, and was also mentioned during a survey yesterday, the Senior Demonstration Programming allows us to expand our program reach in a way that's different from our standard 3 programs of FGP, SCP, and RSVP. For example, an SDP program may have seniors serving kids with exceptional needs and their parents, such as through providing parenting tips or homework assistance tips. This feature is different from our FGP programming, where we have seniors that are serving kids with exceptional needs in the schools and the classrooms, but they are not allowed to provide the sort of reach to parents in offering homework assistance tips to parents. As stated in the webinar yesterday, the Senior Demonstration Authority, which governs the Senior Demonstration Program, allows us to fund innovative programming. The expectation is that the activities will be carried out by seniors, individuals over the age of 55, but the program has a new innovative twist to demonstrate the power of senior volunteers to make significant contributions in their communities as we recover and reopen after the COVID-19 pandemic. As I stated earlier, this is the number three webinar that we've had this week. Thank you so much for folks who had the opportunity to join me earlier as I provided an introduction to AmeriCorps seniors, and the senior demonstration program. Yesterday, we took a tour of the notice of funding opportunity for ARP and for FGP SCP replacement. In today's webinar, we will provide some specific examples about our SDP programming. Before we begin, and just a reminder, all of our sessions are recorded. They will be posted on our website if you need to go back and listen again or listen for the first time for a webinar that you did not have the opportunity to attend previously. Next week, there's a very important webinar concerning our national performance measures and how you can make sure that you are selecting the right measures as you're completing your application. So I'll put a plug in for that. I'm going to turn it over to Colin now to introduce a couple of polls for us.
All right, thanks, Linda. Yeah, my name is Callan Evans. I'm the ARP Training Knowledge Management Specialist, and I want to just welcome everyone. And we're going to go over a couple of polls. If you joined us yesterday, then you'll notice that they are the same. But again, since this is a new webinar, I wanted to see who we have joining us today. So the first poll question is, how would you describe the primary field of your organization? Is it aging, volunteerism, community development, faith-based organizations, higher education, state, county, municipal, or other local government, or something else? So I will give everyone just a few moments to add in their response to this question. And just looking at some of the responses in here, the majority of you have organizations focused on aging as well as something else, with community development being a close third. So we can go ahead and end this poll. And so, yeah, primarily is aging, something else, something else, aging, and then community development. So we're going to do our second poll question, which is going to ask if you've attended any of our other webinars. So yes, no, or not sure. And as the responses are coming in, I can see the majority of you have attended our previous webinars that Linda just went over. All right, so we can go ahead and close this poll out with the majority of you at 80% saying yes, you've attended one of our webinars. So those are the only two poll questions we have at this point. Linda, I will turn things back over to you.
Thank you. We'll start by establishing some basic facts about the competition so that everybody is working from the same basic information. So the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program notice went live on November 1st of this year. Applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on February the 3rd, 2022. The American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program Phase 3 is our call for new applicants or those who do not currently have an active grant with the AmeriCorps seniors to submit applications for funding. We will be programming our ARP funding in accordance with the Section 231 of the DVSA, which authorizes the Director of AmeriCorps Seniors to make grants to public and nonprofit organizations for the purpose of demonstrating innovative activities involving older Americans as volunteers and for testing whether older American volunteer programs may contribute to new objectives or certain national priorities. The specific section, the DVSA Code 42, US Code Section 5028, AmeriCorps Seniors refers to this legal authority as the Senior Demonstration Authority. And by exercising this authority, AmeriCorps Seniors can encourage innovation as communities recover and build back better. Next slide, please. As a reminder, the AmeriCorps Seniors overall framework is based on community programs and community partnerships. And because of you, we do that really well. AmeriCorps Seniors plans to use this opportunity with ARP to build upon that framework. We know we can build on AmeriCorps Seniors programs' local impact by partnering with communities to find solutions to challenges, by building equity into the agency's grant-making process, and through serving communities that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. As we go through this presentation, we are asking you to look to see where we can partner together. AmeriCorps Seniors' goal is to partner with new organizations who are not only supporting COVID-19 mitigation and recovery efforts, but who are also committed to increasing the number of AmeriCorps Seniors volunteers to reopen and rebuild our communities together. Let's talk about some of the resources that you can use as you're preparing to apply for this funding opportunity. I'm going to say that all of your questions, or most of your questions, are likely found in the notice for this particular program. I realize the print on this slide is small, but we wanted to show you all of the funding opportunity page as is currently on our website. You see, if you click on that second link, that is where it will open a notice and provide all of the information to go into greater detail than what I'm able to do today. In addition to the NOFO or the Notice of Funding Opportunity, there are other resources that will be important to you that you will also find on this page. I'm just going to call out a couple of them. The first one is the NOFO, which again establishes the competition, provides the requirements, as well as the evaluation criteria and funding priorities. The application instructions will provide you with step-by-step instructions for navigating eGrants. eGrants is AmeriCorps' electronic grants management system, and all of our funding opportunities, as well as financial and programmatic reports, are completed in eGrants. The notice will also provide an Appendix A, which is a list of priority funding areas for this competition. Appendix A represents communities where we know there are where we don't have any programming right now for AmeriCorps seniors. They are communities that have high poverty rates, or they could be communities that have low COVID-19 vaccination rates. This funding opportunity, while we do call out those communities that are listed on Appendix A, you have the opportunity to apply anywhere in the United States for your program. Appendix B covers national performance measures. And then there's also a list of technical assistance webinars that will be offered. I also want to make sure that you note that there's a frequently asked questions, or an FAQ section. Frequently asked questions are updated periodically, and they provide more information on specific questions that we receive. So you want to make sure that you go back to check that from time to time. I'm just going to cover just very quickly some of the highlights for the American Rescue Plan SDP funding opportunity. I'm not going to go into great detail. These next set of slides come directly from the notice, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page. This funding opportunity is for organizations that are new to AmeriCorps seniors, meaning you never received a grant from AmeriCorps seniors, or if you've received a grant from us in the past, you don't have a currently active grant. So those are the two types of agencies or organizations, if you will, that we're targeting with this notice. We are specifically, because this is ARP funds, we're looking for efforts to help local communities recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. We are specifically interested in applications that establish or support education, which may have been learning loss during the summer or during last year's academic year. Vaccination and vaccination education efforts, especially in hard to reach communities. We are also interested in applications that are actively engaged in removing structural racial inequities, advancing racial equity, and increase opportunities to achieve sustainable change in communities. As I mentioned before, and you'll probably hear me say multiple times throughout this presentation, applicants may propose programming in any county, city, or town. Applicants are encouraged to propose programming in the priority areas that are identified on Appendix A, specifically because we know that those communities are high poverty or they have low vaccination rates. But again, if the community that you're looking at proposing is not listed on Appendix A, that's fine. You can plan and carry out those programming or propose those programs. The next slide lists some programs that we are prioritizing. And you see that this is these programming connects directly back to the COVID-19 pandemic and our recovery from it. Access to care, we're called out looking specifically for public health education opportunities in hard to reach communities or in historically underserved communities. Included but not limited to establishing and supporting contact tracing, vaccination sites, and providing vaccination education, transportation, and registration. In terms of education, we're looking for intergenerational programming where applications engage older adults in supporting students and families for successful transitions to returning to the classrooms, as well as strengthening social emotional learning of students. With veterans and military families, we're looking for programs to improve the quality of life for veterans and improves the well-being of the military family, their caregivers, and survivors. For aging in place, independent living, applications that support communities historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely impacted by persistent poverty and inequity to increase independent living for older adults and/or individuals with disabilities. The notice also calls attention to activities such as companionship to deal with bereavement of a loved one due to death that's related to COVID-19, or providing support to seniors adjusting to a loss of a loved one during the pandemic. Some other areas of programming that we're interested in: access to care, substance abuse. We know that the use of opioids increased tremendously over the last year or so. So applications that focus on AmeriCorps senior volunteers on assignments to increase access to care and participation in health education activities designed to prevent or reduce substance abuse is an area that we're interested in, as well as applications that focus on food insecurity, applications that protecting seniors who may be victims of financial fraud and abuse or neglect, particularly as communities emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. We are aware of the increase in a number of scams and how our older community are targeted most of the times for these fraudulent activities. And then we're also, in terms of workforce development, we want to help communities, recover from some of the economic challenges. So applications that address programming to increase the number of economically disadvantaged individuals who receive job training or other skill development, as well as support around financial acknowledgement, financial literacy, and utilization of savings plans. We are particularly interested in those programs. And then finally, around on our next slide, we talk a little bit about economic mobility programs or activities that engage in helping communities that experience persistent unemployment or underemployment, students experiencing homelessness or those in foster care, or programs that really take a look at increasing the number of underserved and economically disadvantaged individuals having access to an opportunity to develop skills needed for online resources. So those are the types of programming that we are looking for applicants to propose in their applications. This talk a little bit about giving you some suggestions of some program ideas for senior demonstration program. Under this authority, we do currently have senior demonstration program grants that are engaged in innovative practices that kind of marry what's great with our existing programs, FGP, SCP, and RSVP, and kind of branching off into different levels. This first example is one case of that. For our FGP program, the income eligibility is at 200% below the poverty index. With our SDP programs, if applicants propose to demonstrate that by increasing the income eligibility to 400% below the poverty index, they are able to do so, and we can learn from that. What areas we can learn from increasing that poverty level? Does it increase the pool of volunteers who are engaged in our programs in-house? So the second example, an organization can propose to demonstrate that by supporting small support groups, such as book clubs or tea clubs for seniors, that this could be led by what traditionally would be an SCP volunteer. SCP volunteers in the current program structure, they are, they work in one-on-one with individuals, but from a standpoint of a senior demonstration program, perhaps there's some lessons that we can learn around involving small support group settings. Our third example talks about potentially proposing a new partnership with your local city, county health officials to establish a health education outreach project to reach disproportionately impacted communities impacted by COVID. Knowing that COVID outreach is still needed in so many communities, an applicant's goal could be to demonstrate that AmeriCorps seniors volunteers, who are often seen as trusted community leaders, will be able to bring health education tools and resources to high-risk populations. Our fourth example, and these are just examples, you're certainly encouraged to think outside the box of these program ideas, but this is just to kind of help you think about programming that you can propose. So an organization could be interested in partnering with a local jobs training program to bring skilled senior volunteers who could mentor job seekers who are looking to develop new jobs and skills in their communities, particularly as a lot of communities are reopening and recovering from COVID-19. You could also, from this particular program setup, the organization or applicant will be able to demonstrate their impact, plus the fact that they can mobilize senior volunteers to support a proposed service area. And that is our list of some examples, just to kind of get some of your thoughts flowing about program models or types of things that you can propose. Want to take a look at performance measures. There is a training, as was mentioned earlier, on taking a look at performance measures and national performance measures next week. However, I want to do a little bit of a teaser for that. That training is it's very important. For all of our grant making, and particularly for this senior demonstration program for ARP, all applicants are required to use the national performance measures and as a part of a strategy that relies on performance and evaluation data to learn from your work and to make tactical and strategic adjustments to improve your goals. Applicants are also required to use the identified performance measures outlined in the notice. And for this particular competition, that information would be on Appendix B, which is located on the notice page that I provided the screenshot for earlier in my comments. Applicants must identify a primary focus area, and the work plan must include the service activities in that selected primary focus area. Also, for cost-effective practices, applications must include work plans that meet the following minimum requirements, and these are minimum requirements. For volunteer assignments that are non-stipended, for every $1,000 of federal funding, at least one unduplicated volunteer must be placed in work plans that result in national performance measure outcomes for the selected focus area. The volunteer assignments for stipended volunteers, for every $7,500 in federal funding, at least one volunteer service year must be placed in work plans that result in the national performance measure outcomes for the selected focus area. All proposed volunteers and the intended outcomes of their service must be representative in the narratives and in the outcome-based performance measures, as well as in the budget. Again, next week's training will go into greater detail as it relates to the national performance measures, but did want to highlight that, that today to kind of, as you're thinking about your designing your program design, how you can put all those pieces together. And finally, putting it all together, an organization could be interested in partnering with a local jobs training program to identify skilled senior volunteers who could mentor job seekers who are looking to develop new skills or new jobs in their communities, with a specific outcome to demonstrate the fact that they can mobilize senior volunteers to support the proposed service area while building strong community partnerships. So while your juices are flowing, you're thinking a little bit more about what you can propose, we're going to move to a poll. I'm going to turn it over back to Colin.
All right, thanks, Linda. So as she said, we just have a couple more poll questions with some reminders. So the first poll question that we have is about applications. So applications are due, is it December 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m. my local time zone, December 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern. February 3rd, 2022 at 5 p.m. my local time, or February 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern. So I believe that everyone pretty much got this correct at 97%. So almost everyone, we can go ahead and share the results that it is due February 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern time. So for our second question, it's about where you can send questions. So if you have a question, do you send it to American Rescue SDP at cns.gov, your AmeriCorps portfolio manager that's near you, me, the CEO of AmeriCorps, the director of AmeriCorps Seniors. So looks like this one, almost all of you got this one correct, and we can go ahead and broadcast the results. That yes, you would send any questions that you have about this competition to American Rescue SDP at cns.gov. So for the next question, all applications must be structured in a way that volunteers are able to receive a stipend. This is a true or false question. And I see that there's a couple people that are coming in, but overall, we are pretty much at 96% that say, no, 93% that say true. So we can go ahead and broadcast, 93% that says false, and we can go ahead and broadcast those results. The answer is false. The applications do not need to be structured in a way where they all receive a stipend. And then we can move to our last question. All proposed volunteers must be included in a national performance measure that includes an output and an outcome, true or false? So I see all the responses coming in. So at 97%, this answer is true. All right, so those are all the questions that we have for you. Now we will move into the Q&A portion of our event. So if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer the questions that come in. As Linda mentioned earlier in the presentation, but I just want to reiterate it one more time, that because this is a competitive process, there are a few questions we cannot answer. If your particular question is specific or requires a lot of context and discussion, we cannot address that. But again, you can submit your question to American Rescue SDP at cns.gov. So, okay, so one of the first questions. I do actually want to start for just a moment and just do a clarification. We did have a slide that was speaking on the national professional, the national performance measures for the event next week. It's actually on the, excuse me, it's on the 16th, Thursday, December the 16th. We do have one on the 9th, but it's not the one that's for the ARP SDP program. So there were a couple of questions that's asking about that. The information that is posted to our website is accurate. So there's one, let's see, the volunteers come from outside the community. Would they go to rural areas? I'm not quite sure what that means.
That sounds like a question that we can't answer. sounds like a program design specific question.
All right, so there is a question that says, are the senior volunteers in an SDP limited to only provide program services, or can they also be used to help recruit other volunteers?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. My initial reaction is we want them to be engaged in service. However, depending on program design, so you might want to ask that question to the FAQ box. I'm not sure that's a question I can answer either.
And then I think this will bear repeating as well. This came up in the last two webinars. Is there a minimum number of volunteers required?
No, there's not a minimum number. The range, the minimum number to keep in mind is the 100,000. That is the minimum range for a request of funds. But in terms of number of volunteers, there's not a minimum number.
Then is there a set stipend amount for volunteers?
Yes, refer to the notice regarding the stipend amount.
So there's a question of, is there a resource that details the differences between the RSVP, FGP, and SCP volunteers?
Ah, wonderful question. Our website has a page for each of those programs, and so I would start there. Our FGP has its own separate page. It gives some statistics. Same for senior companions and RSVP.
All right, and I'm not sure, Linda, so if we can't answer this, then we can have them submitted to the email. But the question is, if I'm requesting 100,000 for the 2 years, do I need to put 100 volunteers or 50 for first and the 50 for the second? Just organizing volunteers over that 2-year period.
Yeah, that's not going to be a question that we can answer. I'm going to ask you to please refer to the notice. The amount that you're requesting would be for 2 years, because it is a 2-year project period, but please refer to the NOFO.
And this is, can you submit more than one kind of program or activity in the application?
Yes.
Okay. Can the volunteers in the SDP project also be RSVP volunteers?
Not sure I understand the question, because an SDP volunteer is an SDP volunteer. We're not calling them RSVP or FGP. Does that make sense? They would be an SDP volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if for some reason that does not answer your question, feel free to email us and then we can reply. Let's see. Do volunteers need to be US citizens?
Yes, in order to receive money from this federal agency of AmeriCorps, you have to be a US citizen or permanently resident, a permanently resident alien. I'm getting that wrong. In order to be eligible to receive funds. There is on our website, there's a, when you go to our specific programs, eligibility requirements for volunteers is also provided there.
And then asking, does AmeriCorps provide technical assistance if a grantee has issues recruiting volunteers?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Does AmeriCorps provide technical assistance if a grantee has issues recruiting volunteers?
Yes, technical assistance can be provided through your, once you receive a grant, and you will be assigned a portfolio manager. Any kind of technical assistance that you would need, you would engage your, excuse me, you would engage your portfolio manager in that. AmeriCorps also has some general marketing materials that you can use that's available on our website that you can, use to market your program. There are some examples of applications that you can use for your volunteers. There's a lot of resources that exist that you will have access to once you are a grantee of the organization, of the agency.
All right, and then there is a question about, do we have to match the 100,000 in cash and or in kind?
I'm going to ask folks to refer to the NOFO as it relates to the discussion about in kind. I'm sorry. I think I gave it away. As it relates to the discussion about the match requirement is communicated in the NOFO.
All right, there's a question about how to receive a manager. I believe the question is, how do they receive a portfolio manager?
Oh, portfolio managers are assigned to you once your grant is awarded. They are assigned based on our regional structure. So you will not receive a portfolio manager until your grant has been awarded.
All right, let's see what else we have here. This is asking, should it only be one application per organization?
Yes, one application.
And there's a question asking for the link to sign up for the next webinar. We will get the link for the website posted in the chat, just so that you can have access to that. But the sign up link for the next webinar is on our website.
I see there's a question about to show the first page of highlights again. Is it possible to do that? Can we yeah.
There we go. So that's up on the screen now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. This may be a question I need to send in, but I can at least go ahead and read it out, that it's a question that came in. If we're new to federal funding, do we need a single audit to participate, or will our yearly financial audit suffice to begin with AmeriCorps seniors?
The answer to that is in the notice. It speaks to financial requirements. So you can look for that response there.
And then we have two questions about hiring a program manager.
Mm-hmm.
About if hiring a program manager can be included within that budget.
Yes, it can.
All right, looking through. So there's one that says, we have a local COVID economic recovery initiative that touches on many of the different program elements mentioned, not just one. Is that possible? I'm reading that of, is it possible to include more than one focus area that's listed?
If that's the question, then yes, it is possible.
Must the program manager be 55 or over?
The program director, no. The volunteers who are engaged in service have to be 55 or older.
And then we have a question about the minimum number of volunteers based on the required, when the minimum number of volunteers is based on the required number of volunteers per 1,000 unstipend and 7,500 stipend and volunteers. I know that this in the NOFO, but Linda, if there's anything else that you may want to add to that.
I guess in theory that question is true, because that is how you determine the amount of funds that you're asking, that you would like to ask for based on the number of volunteers. But again, the notice provides great detail around how to apply for funds and how to develop your budget. So please refer to the NOFO.
All right, and then this I think bears repeating. It's if I was an RSVP previously, do I still apply for the grant as RSVP, or do I need to apply under Office of Aging? I'm assuming it's if they were previously an RSVP recipient, do they need to still apply for essentially an RSVP type program, or can they apply for something else? In terms of eligibility.
If you do not have an active grant, excuse me, if you don't have an active grant with us, you're eligible to apply. And, you're certainly able to present, any programming to address this NOFO.
All right. So there's our question about entering information into eGrant in stages, or must it occur in one sitting? We do have an upcoming webinar on submitting your application eGrants. But Linda, is there anything that you may want to add to that as of now? I did add in the link to respond to the one Q&A with the registration links, and the registration link for all of our upcoming ones, including that eGrants and national performance, is there.
Nope, perfect. Nothing to add.
All right, any other questions that you may have? So if you have any questions, just use the Q&A box. If you don't have any questions at the time, you can always follow up with us by email. Okay, you said that one that came in, will this recording be available for viewing again? Yes, the recording will be available on the Funding Opportunities website. And that is the case for this webinar, as well as the two that we've already had and the upcoming ones that have not yet occurred. So all of that, the recording and any additional resources that we've gone over are all on the Funding Opportunities page.
Okay, great. If there are no further questions, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We have about 94 participants, and we're so excited that there's a lot of excitement about this funding opportunity, and know that there's a lot of areas that folks can focus on as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to apologize for a little bit of the background noise you may have heard. My office mate is a guinea pig, and he decided that he was very thirsty right now, and he wanted to drink some water. So you may have heard a little bit of him pulling on the water bottle. But I want to thank everyone for your participation today. It was my pleasure to go over information about the Senior Demonstration Program, as well as the ARP Senior Demonstration Program opportunity. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for joining us.